Hey folks, I'm in Newport interviewing the UKIP candidate for the Newport by-election, Neil Hamilton. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Right, so primarily, what would you say the number one problem that Newport has at the moment is?
Well, the big problem we've all got at the moment is Brexit, because the people voted for it, and in Newport 56% voted to leave the EU, but the political establishment, the elites, don't want it to happen. So it's the people versus Parliament. That's what this election is all about. Of course, there are lots of problems that Newport has got: boarded up shops, feeling of hopelessness and demoralisation in the city. You know, we've had a Labour government in Cardiff for the last 20 years, and Wales has gone backwards, not forwards.
Well, yeah, so tell me a bit about the problems that Wales is suffering under what seems to be a kind of one-party Labour state.
Yeah, well, we are a one-party state because ever since the Assembly was created in 1999, we've had a Labour government, and the electoral system reinforces their position. They've got half the seats on a third of the votes. And of course, Plaid Cymru are basically just the Labour Party with a Welsh hat on, and their policies are almost indistinguishable. You know, they're both socialist parties, and what has socialism done for a city like Newport? You know, it's a kind of political gulag here, and Wales is a poor country. Quarter of the households in Wales are in fuel poverty. They spend more than 10% of their income keeping warm and keeping the lights on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I noticed is that, in the town centre here, it's okay, but we go out a couple of streets where we parked, in fact, and there were boarded up shops. It looked like it looked quite destitute. And is this the result of Labour policies, is it?
Yeah, and you know, the business rates on the high street means that it's not economic for people to set up shops. Of course, I know the internet has made a big difference to retail, but nevertheless, the tax system has not reflected that. So we're killing the high streets and killing the centres of cities like Newport because of the tax system. It's the usual state of affairs. The government gets in the way of wealth creation, doesn't actually foster it. And what I want to do is to turn the whole of Wales into a kind of giant experiment in low taxes, proportionate regulation, and a government which doesn't tell people how they should live their lives. You know, we have an anti-obesity strategy. We're telling people they shouldn't smoke, they shouldn't drink, they shouldn't eat this, that, or the other, and that the political establishment should tell us in every respect how we should live our lives. That's not a free country, you know. And so UKIP is the only party that stands out against the consensus, because the Tories are just as nanny state bossy as the Labour Party is, but we're the only party saying it's up to us, the people, to decide for ourselves how we're going to live our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed this as well, and my biggest problem is the very sort of conception of the idea of personal sovereignty is being eroded when the government is telling you what you can and can't eat. I mean, the decision is meant to be up to you. It's you who is meant to take responsibility for how you live your life, isn't it?
Exactly. And now the internet, which was a great blow for freedom when it was created, because we've got a communication mechanism which enables us to outflank the MSM and the big broadcasting media and so on. All that is now being nibbled away at and eroded, and our personal freedoms are under threat yet again. They want to introduce a law to control whether we can look at porn or not, or whatever. And all right, maybe that's not too popular a policy for me to advocate in this election, but it should be up to people themselves to decide what they want to watch, not for the government to tell them what they can watch.
I completely agree, and the list of banned acts as well, and I mean, it's all rather arbitrary, isn't it? It seems to be sort of extreme conservative moralising. It's distinctly anti-libertarian, isn't it?
And the EU's changes on copyright law, which they passed only this week through the European Parliament, are going to stop us using GIFs on our own mobile phones and so on, unless we are going to pay for the privilege of these things. And so it's a dramatic erosion of freedom that's in the making, and we've got to do something about it.
So going back to the sort of local problems of Wales, what else do you think can be done? I mean, when you say you want a sort of low tax, low regulation area, that sounds good, but I think that there is room for sensible regulation. And I think that when people say, oh, low regulation, they get horror stories in their mind of, like, you know, rotting meat that they delivered or something like that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we don't want to remove all controls for public safety. That would be absurd. Yeah. But let's just take, I mentioned fuel poverty a minute ago. 20% of everybody's electricity bill today, roughly, is made up of extra charges that are loaded on to pay for forests of windmills mills that are desecrating the hills of mid Wales or the seas around our coasts, and the profits from which are going to the pockets of big commercial developers, usually in England or even further afield. So the poor people of Wales, let's say a quarter of people are spending more than 10% of their incomes on keeping warm and keeping the lights on, are paying profits for multimillionaire developers to make British industry less competitive, to make therefore our jobs less secure, and to make the whole country less prosperous. So the whole thing is balmy. And anyway, even if we close down the whole of Wales and shipped the population out of it, the reduction in our carbon emissions would be wiped out by the increases that India is making in 10 weeks.
Yes, that's another thing. I mean, I'm obviously not against anti-pollution measures and protecting the climate, but I mean, it's kind of a drop in a bucket, really, when you look at what's happening in China and India. So it seems...
Wales is responsible for 0. Hiya, how you doing? All right? Good man.
Hi.
Good man. I know you're a good man. Oh, well done. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Do you vote UKIP?
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He is.
Thank you.
He's a nice guy.
I haven't paid him, by the way.
No,
I've never
sometimes-
never met before.
No, I've watched you on telly.
Yeah.
You know, when people interview you, things like that. You always smash it, mate.
Well, there's an accolade.
You are a legend.
Can I ask you a question while you're here? What do you think is the sort of number one problem that's facing Newport at the moment?
To me, I would think the most thing which is worrying me is the people sleeping in the street.
Yeah.
Especially in this commercial street, there's quite a bit of them, and then I work in a bank as well. Mm-hmm. So I think really, if somebody can do something about that, that would be great.
Yeah.
What do you think is the reason that there are so many homeless people?
It might be a personal issue, which it might sound a bit harsh. Some people might be on certain things. Okay, some people it might happen that they are homeless because they couldn't afford to pay for accommodation. So
Changes in the benefit system have been botched as well.
Exactly that.
And leaving people without leaving people without benefit for 6 weeks. How are they going to be able to buy food and basic necessities of life? And the government has now belatedly accepted this, and so they're changing the system. But for the last year and a half, we've had this intolerable situation.
Absolutely. Really, I think if somebody really can work, especially, as you say, the benefit things like that. No food, mate.
Yeah.
You just have to give them a quid or so. It's really...
Well, we need to make Wales a more prosperous country so that
Absolutely.
people earn more when they're in work as well. And, Wales is a country which is super dominated by the public sector. 2/3 of the Welsh economy is spent by the government. National income is spent by the government. But we only raise 1/3 of the national income from our own resources in Wales. So it's we need better jobs, and we need therefore to attract the industries of the future into Wales rather than concentrate on...
So more entrepreneurism, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to add one thing, mate, before I go, there's no place like Wales.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody is lovely. Look at that. People are always lovely, friendly. If more can be done,
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
to promote Wales, that would be absolutely great.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Let me just enjoy my
Okay, see
nice
you again.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
I kind of forgot what I was asking you about there.